Hi, my name's Dan, and this video is one in a series I'm doing about particle systems in Unreal using the Niagara plugin. We've got to a state now where I need to start explaining some of the stuff that's going on in an emitter, and we're going to look at the emitter update section. So let's get into it. Let's create a new system, and we're going to use selected emitters. And let's use this omnidirectional burst. Just add one of those to it and finish. And we're going to call this NS mine for because it's mine. All right. So you'll see that over here in the preview, we've got this burst of white particles that's happening, like an explosion of dandruff or something. Um, so the first thing I want to point out is that what's happening here is that this is repeating over and over again. But in the actual world, if we drag one in, well, let's put it in front of the player so it's nice and easy to see. And if we press play, you can see that burst, but it happens only once. Okay, so what you see in the editor is there's a fair, reasonable assumption that you're going to want to see this over and over again. So if you make changes, you can see what's going on. But that's not actually what's going to happen when you get it in the world. And it gets to a certain amount of time, and then it starts its timeline again. You can see this timeline going, which by default keeps running. You've got some controls down here if you want to do anything to it. So this can be frustrating if either you want a single burst and you think, but it's repeating, or you actually want it to be repeating, and you can see it's repeating in the preview, and you're wondering why it isn't repeating in the world. Okay. Now, what we're going to look at is some settings which will show you how to make it repeat if you want to, and various other things. We're focusing on the emitter update section, which is this section here. And we're going to look at emitter state first, and then we're going to look at a couple of different spawn types. So emitter state has got, if you highlight it, you get some parameters over here on the right-hand side, and there are several here. And the first one is you can set it to self or to system. And if it set it to system, what happens is all those options disappear. And if we come over to the system node, there's a system state. And if we click on the system state, we can see those parameters that we had before. So there are similar parameters here. And if you want to just use the same parameters for every emitter, then you can set them at system level, and you don't have to bother setting them at emitter level each time. We're going to go back to our emitter and set it to emitter level to play around with it. Okay, so self. We're going to skip this one, which is the inactive response. This actually just very quickly show you the options here. So what's going to happen in terms of when nothing's happening is the question here. And so this is, if all the particles are finished, then you kill the emitter. The second option is kill the emitter and the particles and die immediately when your time is finished. And in fact, you can see here that we got a length of time of 1 second, and this is our loop duration, but it's only happening once, although it's going round and round here in the preview. Now, if we go and look at this in the world, it doesn't look like it ends abruptly, so it seems fine. But that is going to kill the emitter a bit earlier. And then the final one is continue, which is that the emitter stays alive but is deactivated. It doesn't actually get killed. So let's set that back to the default there. The next one down is the important one. This is the loop behavior. And so at the moment we're set to once, and if we want to get it so that it keeps redoing, we're going to set it to infinite. Okay. We've got a loop duration of 1. So this should be happening every second. 1, 2, 3. Yes, that feels about right. That's about every second that's happening. Okay, so if we want to make that faster, we can go 0.5. Change the loop duration here. And if we go and have a look, that should be reflected in here. Let's click on something else. Yeah, as we press play, that burst is happening every half a second. Go back to the editor. And the other option here is multiple, which is a fixed number of times. By default, this looks like once because it's loop count 1, but we can up this. So if I change that loop count to 3, it should happen 3 times and then stop. Now, once again, this is looping and it's waiting for all the particles to be killed before it loops back around. At the moment, so we're seeing it in bursts of 3. But if we go back to the actual world, we'll see 3 bursts and then it'll stop. Okay, so that's that's the main things here. I do want to say that with all the stuff that I'm doing in these videos, there's often lots and lots of options of things that you can do and ways to plug in variables and make things dependent on other things. And what I really want to do in this series of videos is give you the tools to get started and to give you some understanding about what's happening in the particle systems, rather than bombard you with lots of different things that you can do. That's a really good excuse for the fact that I really don't know much deeper myself than this. Sometimes it takes a beginner to really explain things well to another beginner, so I hope that's wrong. So moving on, I'm going to just talk about the other module in here, which is spawn burst instantaneous. So this is determining how many particles are spawned, and because it's an instantaneous, they all happen at once. Okay, so we can change the spawn count. Let's change that to let's make it smaller and see what happens. 20. It's very small puffs. Okay, and let's change it to 2,000. That's quite a lot. We're not having problems with it speed-wise yet. Let's try 20,000. That seems to be still doing quite well. There's a lot of that being created. I'm now feeling like, how far can I push this? 200,000. Yes, we're finally getting some frame rate slowdown on that. Let's go back down to, let's set that to 300. The spawn time. So I initially thought that this meant it would be spawn over a set of time. It's actually not. It tells you at what point in the cycle it's going to spawn. So you can set it to spawn at time equals 0, or you can set it to be a bit later. So if I go back to the emitter state and change the loop duration to 2 seconds, and go back to the spawn instantaneous and set its spawn time to 1 second, then it's, if you watch what's happening with the green here when it comes back around, that blob there is where it spawns there. So when we go back to play, it shouldn't spawn instantaneously. There should be 1 second before it does. There we go. And they're set at 2 seconds apart, so it still kind of seems right. Okay, let's set that back to 0. 0 is more normal. There we go. You might not want it to be spawning in a burst. You might want a kind of continuous fountain kind of thing. So if you want that, let's get rid of this module. So instantly nothing appears there. What's just happened? Yes, I've just clicked on the plus. I've got the choices here. I want spawning. There's several here. The two that often seem to be used are spawn burst instantaneous and spawn rate. So that gives you spawn over time. The reason why we can't see anything is at the moment the spawn rate is 0. Okay, so I'm going to set this to a fairly high figure, 300, and you can instantly see that it's going continuously. Okay, and then it stops, and then it pauses and comes around. That's because we've got this emitter stake thing where it's doing 3, and then it's waiting for the particles to finish before it comes back. Let's try changing that to die immediately. And that gets to a point and then dies and comes back around. What we probably want on that actually is infinite. Do we need a loop duration on here? Well, it just needs the number of that. Is it going to make any effect? No, it isn't. So we now have a continuous spawning thing, and hopefully if we go in here, that's what it looks like. So that's a quick overview of the two main things that you're likely to get in the emitter update group, which is the emitter state, and we've had a bit of an explore of the different things you can do in there. And we've looked at the spawn rate module, and we've also looked at just click on there and show the spawn burst instantaneous, which was in there before. So next time we're going to look at the particle spawn section, but that's it from me for now.